An Analysis of Sex Work, section. Who are the real carceral feminists? While we know criminalizing women trapped in the sex trade is not the answer, it would be incorrect to assume that decriminalizing Johns and pimps would lead to better conditions for prostitutes themselves. The reality is that the existence of a pimp is criminal. It is abhorrent, and no one has the right to be a pimp, just as no one has the right to be a slave master. To say that a pimp is criminal is not to say that his rehabilitation can occur through the bourgeois carceral system. It is to say, however, that no person has the right to become a pimp, that there needs to be a mechanism to repress pimps from targeting vulnerable women and trapping them in slave-like conditions, and that women escaping pimps need physical protection from their abusers. There is evidence that nations which have decriminalized or legalized pimps and Johns do not see a decrease in violence against prostituted women, but an increase. In Canada, the Supreme Court ruled that criminalization of pimps and buyers was unconstitutional in order to secure the rights of a few well-off, quote, sex workers to better conduct their, quote, business. In doing so, they acknowledged that there are two classes of prostitutes: those petty bourgeois women, the minority, and the masses of proletarian women forced into prostitution, the majority. Decriminalizing buyers and pimps only helps the minority of privileged, quote, sex workers, while disparaging those on the bottom. That is why, rather than protecting buyers and traffickers, we should create opportunity for those most at risk. As one Canadian proletarian feminist front put it, quote, "We must reject the idea that prostitution could be a solution or a social safety net for proletarian women. Instead, we should fight for creating real opportunities, employment, education, etc." End quote. You are not merely calling for an end to the criminalization of women in the sex trade. If you were calling for that, then you would be mostly aligned with AF3IRM's statement. Where you differ is that you are calling to decriminalize Johns and pimps. And by doing so, you attempt to legalize and vindicate the right for bourgeois men to buy proletarian women, the right of settler men to buy indigenous women, the right of Western men to buy women from the global South. The argument that employment law and not criminal law should be used to protect people in the sex trade is based on a faulty understanding of the American legal system. Employment law is civil law, and the most critical factors endangering women in the sex trade fall under criminal law: rape, physical and sexual assault, slavery, trafficking, and robbery. So even if you were to gain some small, quote, employment rights for the sex trade, these issues would still be dealt with by criminal law due to the nature of our legal system. Therefore, such an argument is a moot point. There is no need to think of criminalization in such a banal and binary way. In the final analysis, we can and must defend our proletarian sisters, while also denouncing the sadism of the sex industry and the exploitation from buyers and pimps. As AF3IRM has demonstrated, both are possible. We can be survivors without being victims or criminals. You say that abolitionists are carceral feminists. Yet pimps keep their prostitutes in a form of prison, economically and physically entrapping them so that they are unable to escape. Prisons force labor to expropriate the surplus. Pimps and the state force sexual labor to expropriate the surplus. Sex trade markets trap women inside. In the final analysis, in defending pimps and Johns, it is you who are the true carceral feminists. End section.